Welcome to episode 10 of the African Photography Safaris podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can probably see things are a bit different. Actually, they're very, very different. If you're listening via Spotify, Audible and the other platforms, it probably sounds a little bit different too.
That's because we're right here at Mattikoko Safari Camp in the heart of Lemek Conservancy in one of the most iconic wildlife destinations on the planet, Kenya's Maasai Mara.
That's right, and it's fantastic to be here again at Mattikoko, surrounded by the stunning landscapes and incredible wildlife that make the Maasai Mara so legendary. From the vast open savannas broken up by vegetation around seasonal riverbeds known as lagas, towards the Killaloni Hills, the highest point in the Maasai Mara ecosystem. And what a view from the Boma. So Boma is a Maasai name for the centre of a village, and it's also used as a central part of a camp where guests will come together to eat, drink, socialise. And sitting with us right here in the Mattikoko Safari Camp Boma is none other than Mr. Titimet Nampaso, aka Moses, Safari Guide, owner of the Mattikoko Safari Camp. Also a very, very good friend of ours for many years, it has to be said. So Moses, thank you for having us back here at Mattikoko.
Yeah, karibu sana.
Thank you.
Pleasure. You'll have to explain what that means.
Yeah, it means welcome.
Welcome. Yeah.
Welcome, thank you.
Sure.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bloody hell, it's hot here.
It is, yeah.
We're breaking this special episode up into two parts where we'll share some of our favourite moments from the trip. We're going to be looking at some gear that we're using, chatting with Moses and also Niels Mogensen, Senior Programme Scientist from the... Did that really just happen? Chatting with Moses and also with Niels Mogensen, Senior Programme Scientist from the Mara Predator Conservation Programme. We'll also be recording this safari special over different days, so expect authenticity rather than continuity. We have a follow-on question from our autofocus feature in episode 9, and Alan, we're both here in Kenya now, but we met up in Nairobi at the end of a trip that you were leading. In fact, several trips over several weeks with our friends at Penda Photo Tours. 3 weeks, I think, in total, leading photo safaris, and then a last few days of solid beer and swimming pool action. How's that been?
Yeah, so we had a week in Sorolo Camp in Botswana's northern Tuli, and then we went down to Timbavati in the Greater Kruger Estate Umlani Bush Camp, and then back up to Sorolo in Botswana. So we had three fantastic groups of wildlife photographers in 3 weeks, and highlights for me were... Well, you know, there's a lot, isn't there? I'll try to narrow it down. Elephants who actually came into Sorolo Camp in Tuli, like literally into the camp between us and the kitchen, around the plunge pool and in the bar and all that kind of thing, which was pretty epic. Came for a plurge. Mating lions. We had lion cubs, leopard cubs feeding on impala. Also in Timbavati, lions actually feeding on a giraffe mother and a very, very newborn giraffe, which was a bit of a first for me. It is important to say that I don't kind of seek to glorify this. I think we've spoke about this in a previous episode.
Yeah.
You know, it's about portraying the realities of natural history and the circle of life. It's not about saying, oh, let's go and photograph and film something dead. It's not about that. It really is about a natural history story. Yeah. We also had lots of white rhino, including a juvenile and an angry female, which was objecting to a male's advances. Some incredible close-up shots of brown-headed kingfisher, and a bit of a nerdy one too. We were with a large herd of Cape buffalo in Timbavati when I spotted one female who had a significant wound on her back, and there were around 24 oxpeckers feeding really, really sort of aggressively on the blood. The buffalo looked very unwell. Anthropomorphically, it's sad for the buffalo, but, you know, just like the giraffe hunt, you know, that I just mentioned, we need to look at it from the wildlife photographer's perspective, and it represents an interesting moment to photograph and depict part of the overall natural history story taking place, a bit of a sort of parasite relationship between the oxpecker and the buffalo. We also had opportunities for a bit of exposure creativity too, with some baboons in very early morning light in Sorolo. They were backlit by some sun, so we looked at some underexposure to get that sort of rim-lit effect, you know, which works really well with animals such as lions, particularly the males, but also with hyenas, baboons, anything where the sort of light can diffuse in loose hair or fur. And that was a really sort of good creative morning photography session that everybody enjoyed too.
Nice. So all photography safaris have special moments that we remember forever. We're going to just cover a couple of those things, of the many that standout experiences that we've had on this trip. So over to you, Alan. What's yours?
I think seeing the male cheetah on our first evening drive and also seeing them next day was a very special moment, not just for me, but for the group of photographers who we were working with, of course, too. Yeah. The lions, well, they've been absolutely epic. The Lemek Lion Pride, especially a couple of nights ago when we found them very, very close to camp. They were actually just down the bank here in some of the green foliage. We were the only vehicle with them as well for ages, which was absolutely amazing. Yeah. I think one more arrived eventually, but we'd already tracked them as they sort of moved through the vegetation behind where we're talking now. They moved around sort of Mattikoko, camping out on the other side of the vegetation onto the plain, where they sat around on the rocks for an hour or so. Yeah. They interacted with each other, particularly the younger ones, the juveniles, and they then kind of stalked some prey. It wasn't really serious hunt, but it was all just so close to camp, and I think that was that was absolutely epic.
Yeah, it was literally just over there by the time they'd moved on the rocks. And
absolutely.
The little jackal was following them
little
as well.
Jackal,
pestering them.
It was a really good moment, that, and I think that was one night where all we photographed was lions. We were with them for that long. We didn't actually photograph anything else, which was pretty good. To see the whole story building and the movement and that. It was really good.
Yeah, everyone was really made up when we came back in. It was like, that was an amazing afternoon.
Yeah. So, it's not just about the megafauna either. I've also really enjoyed photographing the interactions between the herds of wildebeest and zebra. And as usual, the oxpeckers and the cattle egrets on the sort of larger herbivores. Yeah. I always really enjoy that sort of thing. And one of those really strange moments that cropped up that I really enjoyed was when we had a blue-headed agama lizard on a tree, and we had the male and the female. And you could see the beautiful colours of the male, but you could hardly make out the female on the tree. She was so well camouflaged. Yeah. Just little unexpected things like that are really sort of worthwhile to stop and photograph. It's not just about the lions and the ellies. But speaking of the ellies, we have had some great elephant moments. We were very, very close, and I mean like really, really close to a mother and a juvenile yesterday morning. And I always find that very special, not just photographically. Elephants are so intelligent. They demand utmost respect, which they of course get. But to be accepted in their habitat and have them allow you to be so close to them as they feed, it was just, they were literally within a yard of the vehicle at one point.
Too close for my lens, actually.
It was just an amazing experience to be that close to them. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. So, what about you, Khalil? What's been your fantastic moments so far?
Well, I think for me, it has to be the Lemek lions hunting a baby topi. We'd been photographing 5 lions of the Lemek Pride just loafing around, and suddenly the adult lioness switched into uber hunting mode, and she set off into the grass. Her grown-up cubs followed at a bit of a distance, not wanting to get into the way, but they were really excited at what she was doing and what she might have found. She must have smelled the baby topi in the grass that had been left hidden in the long grasses by its parents, which is common. We finally spotted the baby, and Moses managed to get us quickly into position in the vehicle to film a rough and ready handheld video of the hunt. It's a bit all over the place, but if you're watching this on YouTube, it's not the most perfect video, but I'm just glad I got something handheld. Anyways, the chase unfolds. It becomes obvious that the adult lioness is actually herding the topi into the clutches of her cubs. The desperate antelope puts on an amazing sprint past its parents, who are just kind of looking on dumbfounded, and past the first cub, which misses. It manages to outrun the lions for a short while and jinks to the left, and then runs out of steam eventually as the cubs tackle it to the ground. Poor thing, but, like a lot of these things, like all these hunts, this is just this topi will feed the cubs. It's not cruel, it's just life for these animals. And to underline that the mother was herding the topi into the cubs, she sat guard while they ate it, not taking a bit for herself. And she provided a meal for them and taught them how to hunt by giving them a head start.
You say it's not the best of hunt videos, but actually it was pretty good because it showed exactly that. It showed how the mother sort of ran and chased the topi towards the cubs to let them get the practice to make the kill. So, the video does show that very clearly. So to me, it was still a pretty good video, actually.
Yeah, it's a nice record, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to talk a bit about the gear that we're using out in the Maasai Mara here on safari, because obviously what we're using is personal to us, but it's also quite important to show you what we're using, why we're using it, what's working, what isn't.
Absolutely. It's something that we've talked about quite a bit in the podcast over the previous 9 episodes, what gear we take, how to pack it and all that kind of stuff. So we thought we'd do a little segment just to sort of run through what we're actually using on a day-to-day basis as we're out here in the field in the fantastic Lemek Conservancy of the Maasai Mara. So first off, I have got my main cameras. I'm going to try not to spill me beer. That's absolutely crucial. My main camera that I'm using is here with this lens. It's the Fujifilm X-H2S. My main workhorse camera, that's probably the best way to describe it. And I'm mostly using it with the XF 150 600mm lens, which is fantastic sort of versatility. We talk about that quite a lot in the podcast, the versatility of lenses and how important it is when you've got animals and mammals and birds of such diverse species, sizes, different ranges. So being able to go right up to 600mm, which is effectively 900mm on the sort of APS-C format sensor, is great for small bird photography and for the sort of larger mammals as well. Just put that down on there so it doesn't fall. What I've also got is something quite special. It's not the first time I've used medium format in the Maasai Mara, but it is the first time I've used the GFX 100S2 and the pretty much brand new GF 500mm f5.6 lens. So
I still can't believe that's a 500mm lens.
It's absolutely unbelievable, and just the weight of it as well.
Tiny.
It's so light. It's insured. Andreas has probably just had a heart attack if he's watching this. So yeah, it's great to use it, and it's quite fast as well. I mean, when I say it's quite fast, it's fast for the amount of data that's getting thrown around.
For medium
102 megapixel files or something like that. And it's 7 frames a second with the sort of fast frame rate going. So it is pretty quick in that respect. It's quite slow compared to the sort of XH2S with 40 frames per second. But
it's definitely
it's
a lot slower than mine.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using it quite a bit. I'm looking forward to sort of getting to see what the end files will look like. Outside of that, we've also got a couple of accessory bits and pieces. I've been using the Insta360 quite a bit for some BTS sort of social media footage, and that's on the end of one of these ridiculous 10-foot selfie sticks, so dragging it around outside the vehicle as well.
I'm sure at that length it's not actually a selfie stick anymore.
No, it's probably not now. Also, we have the all-important, something that I really advocate quite a lot, is the
a bit of a tangle.
Yeah, it is a bit. Is a monopod. Monopods, I think, are fantastic to use in safari vehicles. I think they're much more versatile than a beanbag. A beanbag, you can only use it at the height that you're resting the beanbag on. I think monopods are much better. This is the Alana from Three Legged Thing, and I've also got the Airhead Trinity, which is also from Three Legged Thing on top, which is ideal for use with a telephoto lens on a monopod, because you can lock the pan and then you just use it as a tilt, which is ideal for a monopod. Super lightweight, super small, all super strong, and it's great gear. I have been using that with, now and again, a docks stabilizer, which sits on the bottom of a monopod, or you can just use it as a little bit of a tabletop tripod as well. And on top of that, we have something here called a pivot arm. This is a new product from Three Legged Thing. It's actually officially embargoed at the minute as I'm sitting speaking about it.
Yeah,
but by the time we actually edit this, and back in the UK, that embargo will have been lifted.
By the time who edits it?
By the time you edit it.
Yep.
So I've been using this as just on the Insta360 camera with a little sort of clamp on some of the vehicles as well to do some footage when we've been stationary and as we've been walking around. Quite a chunky bit of kit, but very, very, very strong.
Looks solid.
When I say chunky, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a good way, because it is absolutely solid. I think we've been using some of these little pivot arms and things in the past from other suppliers, and I've always found them to be a little bit sort of feminine, a bit weak.
Bit
I'm really, really impressed with this. It's quite a substantial, strong bit of kit. It just gives you a little bit of confidence in its movement, and it's not going to slip and it's not going to move around. Lastly, all important things that we have talked about previously in the podcast are these and these are basically dust covers for cameras. They're one-sided. You don't shoot your camera with them on. Just use as a little storage sort of sleeve when you're driving around, because it does get really, really dusty out here, massively dusty, which is a problem. And just being able to slip your camera in and out of these things is really, really quite useful. So these are really good. Wildlife watching supplies in the UK.
I think that one is,
they're pretty good.
I've got a larger one for bigger lenses as well.
Yeah, they also pretty good for a little bit of padding in your camera bag as well.
Padding
so yeah, they're really
carrying
good.
clothes or whatever.
Yeah, really good.
We're going to do that to every bit of kit.
Yeah, we'll do that to every bit of kit. Yeah, just chuck it behind. So that's it.
Is that you? Shall I have a go?
Yeah, you
right.
have a go now.
Okay, well, we're actually recording with my camera, so I'll cut to a shot of that in a minute. But the lens I'm using on the Sony, I think I'm the only Sony person here.
Yeah.
I feel
It's been a high standard.
Yeah. So actually the camera I'm shooting with is a Sony A9 III, which is absolutely amazing. It shoots at 120 frames a second. And the lens I'm using it with pretty much exclusively is this 200 to 600 G lens. And it's I think it opens up to f6.3 at the widest, which is not the widest, but it's also pretty compact. It's not too bad. And
it's all about compromise, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the same as this.
Exactly.
Compromise.
Yeah, as you know, I've brought 400 f2.8 lenses out before, and they're absolutely massive, unwieldy, and really amazing to use, though.
Brilliant.
And one of our clients had one as well, and it worked really well for him. And you can stick a 2x converter on that, and it ends up at f5.6. So that's pretty amazing. Other than that, I haven't really used it very much, but I've got an 85 f1.4, which is a beautiful, beautiful lens, but obviously that's a little bit limiting with wildlife. It's more for when you're a bit closer and it's dark, almost dark anyway. We were photographing a male lion last night, and guess who forgot his 85mm f1.4?
And it was dark.
Yeah. So that was no use. On the camera at the minute, I'm shooting with I'm shooting with a 55mm prime. That's a 1.4 as well. I do love my primes, and here's another one. Not often used here, but we do use it for a bit of landscapes. Used it for the portrait of everybody, the group, and when we did breakfast at the Mara Triangle. So this is 24mm f1.4. Again, I haven't really been using it very much. It's really just been the big 200 to 600, which is really flexible, very high quality, and the perfect compromise, I think, for a safari is that sort of, different systems have different lenses. It's usually 150 to 500, 150 to 600, 200 to 600. All of that sort of range is absolutely perfect for safari. Another thing I use a lot here, and we should probably recommend this to clients to bring if they've got a pair of binoculars, is just when you're looking for wildlife, and often the guides are stopped and looking for wildlife, scanning the horizons and the plains, it's really nice to have a set of binoculars yourself, and sometimes you'll spot things that they don't, although to be fair, that's pretty rare. And I think, some of the other stuff is more or less a duplicate of what you've been using. Monopod, and also the docks. When I've been standing up in the vehicle and shooting through the roof, I've been using a docks to sit the camera on, so that it's nice and stable. So that's particularly useful for video, because it means you can still move the camera around, but it's a lot more smooth. So this is my Sony A9 III. I kind of see it as Sony's flagship at the minute, even though I know it's not, because the Alpha 1 is, and there will be an Alpha 1 out at some point, but not just yet. And this seems to have most of the features that I would say it was, the top of the range. People talk about the global shutter, which is amazing, but it's probably not really that much of an issue for me. More is things like subject recognition, which we've talked about in the podcast.
Now we talk quite a lot about subject detection, didn't we?
Yeah, that works incredibly well. In fact, to the point of so we talked also about me using back button focus and you not.
Yes.
And because of subject detection and its reliability, which I've found here with animals and birds, it's just amazing. And I don't need that control of back button focus, and I've actually switched it off now. So I just use it as normal.
I think just as a little reminder, back button focus is about being able to focus and recompose.
Yeah.
Popular to contrary belief, it doesn't sort of enable some super duper autofocus tracking mode, which you often read, which is wrong. It's about focus and recompose in a continuous autofocus mode without the camera refocusing. So if you've got subject detection, you don't need to focus and recompose because your camera should be finding your subject for you.
I used to like it a lot in that I was the one who decided when the focus went, but it's just unnecessary now, I think. It wasn't with my previous camera, but with this one it is. So the other thing.
Welcome to the world of subject detection.
I know.
At last.
It is quite a revelation,
Yeah,
actually. There's lots of different modes. There's like human, train, plane. I mean, I never use that, but
I was using train yesterday. Just for the station.
just on the planes. Planes would work actually. We've got plenty of planes going over, little two-seater planes. The other thing I want to talk about is pre-capture, which different manufacturers call it different things. I know the Olympus is pro-capture.
Pro-capture, pre-shot.
Pre-shot, yeah. On the cinema camera that I use, it's called Picture Cache or something. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so it's basically what it is that the camera is continuously recording shots all the time. And you can set how much of that buffer that it's writing to when you press the shutter button, it then dumps all of the shots you've taken, or it's taken, before you even press the shutter button, and dumps those on the card as well. So the classic thing that it's really, really useful for is something like when you're waiting for a bird to go off and fly off a stick, or if you're watching some animals and you're waiting for them to do something interesting, you don't waste a whole slew of shots that you're just going to chuck away. Having said that, you end up chucking a lot of stuff away at the end anyway, but honestly, the rate of success is massively more than I've ever had before. So waiting for a bird to fly is just one of those tedious things that wildlife photographers do. And if you've got pre-capture on, the human reactions aren't fast enough really to get that moment. I mean,
especially with smaller birds, little birds, you just can't react quick enough.
No, I mean, you can often see some of the behaviour of the bird in that you might see it sort of shift about a bit, or preen itself, or do a dump. Or that quite often happens actually.
Birds of prey.
But now the hit rate is just so much better. Now I've got to be really careful with this camera, because another thing I was going to talk about is that it shoots 120 frames a second, and that's in RAW. It doesn't hit the buffer until I think about 160 shots. So with pre-capture on, you've got to remember to turn it off. So I've actually got another button that I've around the front of the camera, and I've set that to pre-capture toggle, which is on and off, and I can see when it's on and when it's not, even though I've left it on a few times and got a... So at the minute it's taking half a second. That's 60 frames that it's dumping into the buffer every time I do that. And I've got quite a few shots of my foot, which is not ideal. Hundreds of shots of my foot, actually.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I do a lot of work at 40 frames per second, sometimes with pre-shot on, sometimes with off, depending on what the subject is. And you might get 2 or 3 seconds at 40 seconds. And, yes, you're going to delete a lot of it.
Yeah.
But what you're going to do is greatly increase the chances of getting that perfect moment, assuming your shutter speed's right. Yeah. So, you can delete 50, 60, 70 shots or whatever, but it gives you the one shot that you actually want, and that's where the sort of differential lies, really. Yeah. And I think furthermore, frames per second, it's not necessarily about doing, 50, 60 frames a second for ages and ages and ages. What the advantage of having 50 frames a second is having 25 frames in half a second, because that's where the action actually happens.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I've been experimenting with as well is, because I'm a filmmaker, is apart from the fact that this camera, the A9 III, shoots amazingly detailed, clean, high dynamic range video at 4K, 120 frames a second continuously, which is amazing, but also the pre-capture thing, or whatever we're calling it, pro-capture,
pro-shot,
the buffer job, whatever.
Going back in time and take photographs shot.
So an example was I took some pre-capture shots, like a whole sequence of a bird taking off a lilac-breasted roller, and by the time I'd pressed the shutter button, it had already taken 60 shots. So interestingly, what you can do is you can then use Lightroom or whatever to export all of those individual images, and they're all raw 6K images, into individual frames, which you can then pick back up in something like DaVinci Resolve, and it'll convert those into a slow-mo, short clip of the bird taking off, and it's pretty amazing, Okay.
It is clever. It's an interesting thing, because effectively what you're then doing is we've talked a long time about being able to wanting to be able to grab stills out of video footage, and how that's not necessarily always possible, because you're limited to 50th of a second if you're shooting at 25 frames a second, or whatever the formula is. But to be able to do it the other way around, effectively making video out of stills footage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it works really well, surprisingly well.
It's quite interesting, because we seem to have had a bit of a sort of a reversal. It's you that usually packs sort of 3 cameras and
the kitchen sink
in the kitchen sink, and it seems to be me that's done that this time, and you're here sort of very sort of lightly packed compared to me. Actually, what I do have as well, which I didn't mention, is my XF50 to 140 f2.8, which strangely I haven't used that a great deal in the Mara, but I used it quite a bit when I was in Timbavati in Botswana 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Not as practical here, or
I don't know.
got other options?
I think it's a lot of it is about the different terrain, especially in the Timbavati. We're here, we've got vast open spaces.
Yeah.
But in the Timbavati, we're a lot sort of dense foliage. I mean, there are open spaces as well, but generally speaking, we're in and out of a lot of vegetation. So I think sometimes a closer lens often works better in that habitat as well.
Yeah.
Compared to the sort of 600. But the 600 in that habitat is actually really good for bird life as well. So.
Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the gear. We've probably forgotten something, but that's broadly what we're using and how it's working for us. So, yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
That wasn't staged at all. So welcome to the podcast. Moses, aka Titimet Nampaso, true Maasai, graduate of the Maasai Mara Koyaki Guiding School, a fantastic guide, and now the owner and director of Mattikoko Safari Camp, where we are now, and one of very, very few Maasai to actually own and run his own safari camp here in the Maasai Mara ecosystem. Moses, do we know how many Maasai actually own their own camps like you do?
I'm not so sure how many are there, but there are very, very few. I only know of one other guide, Jackson Loseya. He's been featured in the Big Cat Diary, BBC, back in the years, and he's got a lot of years of experience in the bush. And now they have a camp called Tangulia Mara. Right. And he will be one of the few, maybe if we are very many, 5 of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Very, very not a lot considering
not
how
a
many
lot.
camps
Not a
there are.
lot.
Yeah.
So let's wind the clock back quite a few years to, I think, 2012. And I think that was when we first met. Khalil and I arrived in the Lemek Conservancy to do some wildlife photography, and you were our guide. And basically we've worked together ever since, which is sort of 12 years now, if 2012 is right. So Moses, how long have you actually been guiding for, and what made you choose that as a career?
So I started guiding. So I went to the Koyaki Guiding School. I was a 2006-2007 academic year graduate. And that was the second year the Koyaki Guiding School was established.
Oh, okay.
So we were the second lot to join the Koyaki Guiding School. One of the fortunate few Maasai guides who have gone through a great training in the bush, and I love it. So I've been guiding since 2008. So it's quite a while now.
Many more years to come.
Many more years to come.
Many more years, definitely. Yeah. So I remember you talking about the pipe dream of having your own camp one day. At what point did you start thinking you'd like to own and run your own camp? It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, it's true. I think I have mentioned to a few people, few close friends who have asked me, what's your aspiration for the future? And you must be one of them.
Yeah. Yes,
2012 is quite a long time now, and I remember mentioning to a few people. So 2008, after I finished school, working with different camps and lodges around the Mara, I thought of this as a good idea for the future. So that's when I started to have a vision and say, oh, maybe it's possible. And it made it. I had to work a lot harder for many more years because it's a very huge project.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I took myself into it and did what I could, and here we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the name Mattikoko as well is really special. So we know what it means, but perhaps you could explain how you came up with that and what it means to you.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a good name that has a lot of meaning to me.
Yeah.
And Mattikoko came to my mind. In different other other tribes or something, I was thinking of a place that belongs to me and a place that I belong, which is the Mara, and this is where I was born, this is where I grew up, and this is home.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of a name that means a lot to me. So Mattikoko means a lot to me. It's the initials of my family.
Yep.
So Marion, my wife, the single T for my little son Tongei, and then myself Titimet, and then I have Kolian and I have Kotoine. So I have 3 sons, Kotoine, Kolian, and Tongei, and my wife Marion. So I kind of thought of one name that has a huge meaning to my future.
Absolutely.
So the Conservancy model is something that we often talk about, obviously in positive terms, not only in the podcast, but also on social media and when sort of guests or potential guests ask about coming out on this trip with us. Now here in Lemek, we are in one of the Maasai Mara conservancies. It sits a little way outside of the main national Maasai Mara reserve that most people will probably be most familiar with, but it actually forms a crucial part of the overall greater Maasai Mara ecosystem. How do you feel that the Conservancy model benefits the greater ecosystem, particularly with the sort of need to balance or the need for balance between the pressure and the risks of excessive tourism and the sort of need to generate income from tourism?
Yeah, I feel very positive about the conservancies. One of the best things about the conservancies is that there was a huge piece of land left outside the game reserve. So the animals are in abundance. There's a lot of zebras, a lot of elephants, a lot of lions, a lot of hyenas. Name them. There's a lot of animals outside the reserve than the actual inside the reserve. So this land was unprotected. It's not under any protection. So the conservancy model was a way to go, because when the people own the land, it's owned by the Maasai people, and they still need to do their practicing of their culture. So they keep their pastoralists. They keep they keep cattle. But then the model is very unique because it's a coexistence which has been there for years and years. Our families were here. We grew up. It's many generations growing in this land and living with wildlife. But then to make this make a lot of sense, now the concept came in where people or investors come in and pay money to lease their land or to protect their land and still allow their pastoralist way of living. So didn't interrupt with anything, but in fact brought a lot of benefits to the local people.
So it's about protecting the wildlife and protecting the sort of traditional Maasai way of life as well, isn't it?
The model is very unique. It's the wildlife, it's the people, and it's the land.
And the culture.
And the culture and people's heritage. So it's all protected together with a very mutual balance that everyone is coexisting together. So it's very unique. As opposed to the national reserve. I love the national reserve, but it's not working a lot with the people. It's not you can see a little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah, it's a tourist destination rather than an actual
Yeah.
place where the Maasai live, work, and where the
Exactly.
wildlife comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's actually, if we talk of the Maasai Mara National Reserve, I will say still involved with the Maasai people around, because
Right.
they've got a percentage, like a 19%, where the local people are still able to kind of benefit
Right.
in a way,
Yeah.
either bursaries or something, but still under the Narok County Council, which is Maasai Mara National Reserve,
Sure.
is under Narok County Council.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the herders also get a chance to graze their cattle sort of in rotation, but in a way that, well, perhaps you could explain it a little bit better, how that works in terms of the Conservancy as well.
Yes, so in terms of the Conservancy, we are talking about something called holistic grazing. So we move the cattle, all the members. If you have land in Lemek, you bring in cattle. It's a herd that moves around the Conservancy, and that helps because we try to concentrate on the bare land, where we have erosions, where we have bare land with no grass, overgrazed areas. We put the boma, or we put the cattle to stay there, and they break the hard soil, urinate, and kind of create a water retention point. So when it rains, the hoofs have already broken the hard. Plus, when they're feeding, they bring all the grass seeds and everything, and it grows to be very nutritious grass. And we move them as a tool to help with the rangeland management.
Which also helps the wildlife
also
in
helps
turn.
It's like a positive circle, isn't it?
Very
really?
positive,
Yeah.
Yeah. There are several advantages of being in the conservancies as a photographer and filmmaker, and also, somebody who brings groups of people here, of amateur photographers for the wildlife. Fewer vehicles are here. The ability to drive off-road are two massive advantages off the top of my head, and also the sort of etiquette of only 5 vehicles being allowed to be around the wildlife, and everything about how that benefits not only us but the wildlife. But I just wondered, from your perspective, what do you feel about us bringing groups of photographers and filmmakers here to stay at Mattikoko and enjoy the wildlife around here?
Yeah, you are very much welcome to come all the time.
Thank you.
And we like you, and the community likes you, and Kenya at large.
Nice to hear.
It's very important. During the times that we struggle with tourism, with diseases, and like COVID pandemic, was very hard time for conservation at large, because there was no people visiting. At the moment, when you come visiting with groups, everybody benefits. Talk of the supermarket, talk of people, people working, talk of the whole conservancy at large.
Yeah.
When you come here, you're promoting the economy of Kenya at large. So you're promoting airlines, you're promoting Nairobi, somewhere in a hotel somewhere. So we love you. And
we love you too. It's mutual.
And everyone is happy to see you photographing and showcasing the beauty of this natural habitat.
Sure.
The more we have people like you coming, the more the conservation will thrive. So we feel very, very positive about you.
That's very nice to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just going to move here and stay here.
Yeah. Karibu sana.
That's a good idea. I like the sound of that.
Yeah. I was going to ask, actually, is there much difference between, say, a photography group like ours and normal tourists just coming to see the animals, from your perspective? Your groups, the photography groups, you have the right machines that we need to showcase the beauty. Talk of something like a lilac-breasted roller. Yeah. Apparently, it's Kenyan's favorite bird.
Yeah.
It's the national bird of Kenya.
Sure.
Yeah.
We need a good camera to capture that. Not a Samsung phone like mine.
Anyway, phone photography.
Yeah, for photography, then we have the right tools for the right images.
Yeah.
So that showcases more,
of course,
of the beauty of even a small a small bird like a pectoral pachysiscola.
Yes, which I'll put an image up of that today. I did get a rather poor shot of one, but I got one finally. A tiny little bird. So I'm very pleased with that. Excellent.
Yeah.
So one of the wildlife benefits, and something that is really an important thing to us, is that we're here in the heart of the Conservancy, or the Lemek Conservancy in this case. Out there's lions, leopards, elephants, buffalo, hyena. There's no fence at all around this camp. So wildlife is free to roam through, as we saw with the lions a day or two ago. And that's how it should be. Now, I know predators are very, very unlikely to come close during the daylight hours, but we have had giraffe, zebra, elephants very, very close. And I actually remember sitting right here a year or two ago, and there were quite a few zebra literally standing within a few meters of us, which is incredible. And it's all to do with having the wildlife right to roam and no fence. How do you feel about that sort of concept, fenceless or fenced camps?
Yeah, I love it. I am a big fencing man, and I feel that's my feeling of the bush, and I like the experience itself. It's about the acceptance. So animals accept we stay together with them.
Yeah.
And that's how it used to be, natural. So trying to come here, forget about the worries of the world. Turn off your phone for a few minutes or a few days. Disconnect yourself and bring back your senses to nature.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Read about how you can live with this animal.
Yeah.
I like it the way it is, because when you go to the city, there's no way you can hear a lion roar.
No.
And when you go to a busy place, fenced place, there's no way you can hear a hyena giggle.
Yeah.
So I like it here. I like the fact that when I'm in my tent, I forget about all the worries of the world and hear the sounds of the wild. It's very, very natural.
Yeah.
And brings back your senses to reality. Like you can listen for something, you can smell for something. If a big elephant on mask passes here 300 meters away from you, you can smell it.
Mm-hmm.
That means your senses of smell are working.
Yeah.
It's the same to the hearing.
Yeah.
So I'm an anti-fencing, and I like the fact that my askaris will escort you from the boma to your tent. They'll try and stop you for a minute and say, hey, we have an elephant passing by, let's stop. That I like it that way.
Sure.
So I hope, and fingers crossed, everything goes well and everyone is happy. It's a good experience.
Yeah. Just to explain what an askari is, it's that's like a Maasai guard.
An askari is a Maasai guard. He has a massive spear.
That's right.
Yes.
And he has a massive sword.
Yep.
And he has a big rungu.
What's that, a stick or something?
Like a knob curry, like a big club.
Yeah.
And he has a very powerful torch. So he will be able to advise before we move from the boma to the tent who is around camp, and we will find a solution on how to do it.
We always feel completely safe as well.
But there's something quite amazing about just falling asleep at night and just listening to the hyenas, listening to the baboons, listening to distant lions, listening to the footprints that are going on around once they got the sort of silence of the dead of night. And that's something that's really special that would be totally and utterly ruined if there was a fence, or you were in a fenced camp. It just wouldn't be the same, I don't think.
Yeah, quite a lot of them are electrified as well now, aren't they?
They give it
seems like a shame.
Electric shock to the animal.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
It's nice to sort of feel, as you said, so you kind of feel alive when you know there are animals around there, but you're completely safe.
Yeah,
you feel connected to nature.
Yeah. It's a bush camp experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. I also remember that morning when the lions hunted a juvenile giraffe very close to camp, and we caught up with the male and the remnants of the dismembered giraffe the next morning. That was absolutely epic. The noise about 3 a.m. when we did some photography about 7 just down here, a few tens of meters away, literally just down there. It was amazing.
I remember that well.
It was an amazing experience. Remember, we went to the tent and say hello. hello, don't come out. There's lions around, and the whole experience. You know, I mean, like okay, when we got whoever was in that tent out, we had to escort to the boma, and then after that, let's rush to the car park. Yeah. Let's have a quick cup of tea or coffee, and then we go. Off we go.
Yeah.
We just moved around the camp, and there they were.
Yeah, just down to the bottom.
Yeah,
just down there.
Yeah, you can't get to do that in a fenced place.
Absolutely not. I mean, we could have walked down, and it would have taken 2 minutes, but that would have been really ill-advised. I think with there was a lion guarding his carcass of the giraffe.
Absolutely,
it was very exciting though.
Yeah. Over the years, 3 of us have spent many, many hours, if not weeks, on the plains of the Maasai Mara, and I thought we could put this to a little bit of a test. Yeah. Okay, so I've got a pile of paper here.
Yeah.
I'm going to take turns in writing down what we think each other's favourite animals are. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to give this paper out. 3 sheets each.
Okay.
Okay. Pass 3 on, and we'll start with Khalil.
So you want me to write
Khalil is going to write down what his favourite animal is on there and not show anybody.
Right. Okay.
Actually, no.
Microphone down.
Yeah. Without showing anybody.
Right.
And then Moses and I will also write it down without showing you.
Right.
You can reveal yours and we'll see if we both guess it correctly. Okay, so pass the pen to Moses. Moses, write down what you think Khalil's favourite animal is here in the Mara.
It's not that fly that's buzzing around your glass.
And then pass the pen. Pass the pen. And I'm going to write it down too. I'll have to put the microphone down.
Okay.
Right, so Khalil, you reveal your answer.
Right,
and then we'll to the camera.
Right.
And then we'll reveal ours. So Moses to the camera, and I'll reveal it as well.
Okay, this is probably not a surprise to most people, but my favourite animal is a leopard. I mean, I have a film company called Wild Leopard Films, so...
Oh,
Leopard.
Lion, you said, yeah. Aha, yeah. Right. No, definitely leopard.
For those listening to the audio version of this podcast, Alan got that right because he knows me well, and Moses got that wrong.
Let's try Moses. If you write yours down, there's a Sharpie.
Okay, you go first.
And then don't show us, and we'll write ours down, what we think it is.
I'm trying to think what his favourite might be.
Okay.
Could be anything with you. could be that tiny little sister cola.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, I'm gonna have a guess.
Right, I've got mine down for Moses.
I don't think you spent this long writing.
I was going to say, what on earth animal was that you've written down there? So Moses, you reveal that to the camera over there. See what we've got.
I should have known. I should have known. I know.
For those listening to the audio version of this podcast, Moses's favourite animal was a hyena. Alan got it right, but I got it totally wrong and thought it was a lilac-breasted roller.
Yeah, very good, very good.
So now I will try to do the same thing. I'll write down my favourite animal. Good job we didn't ask you to draw it. We'd still be here next week.
Draw it.
Okay.
What on earth's getting written down there? Yeah, memoir.
It's an essay.
Tusker elephant.
Tusker elephant. Oh, very good. On beer.
Tusker elephant.
Funnily enough, I wrote beer or cheetah.
Cheetah.
Cheetah. There we go.
Yeah.
We were all on the same line. Yeah. To be fair.
Yeah. I'm sure beer is an animal. Pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
Tusker elephant beer.
Yeah.
So I first visited Mattikoko in March 2020, briefly for a night with Boston, when I was working here with Fujifilm. And I obviously knew for years that having your own camp was an ambition, and I knew how much work that you'd put into it. It was absolutely incredible to spend that evening here having a couple of beers with you and your lovely lady Marion. But then it all kind of went a little bit wrong, didn't it? The global pandemic hit. Pretty much everything went wrong for everybody. So how did that affect you and the sort of development of Mattikoko?
Yeah, it affected everybody, which was very, very bad for everyone. Affected the progress of, the project was like a little bit before that. I started it 2019, and then the next year was COVID, and then there was no work. So almost 2 years without work, and so I never got to finish the project. So there were some bits left without finishing, and everyone was struggling. Kenya was struggling, and people were afraid of coming on safari. So we've never really got really big, massive people coming or something, full camp or something. But because it's a long-term project, we'll take it. I call it pole pole.
Yeah,
Slowly, and see how
pole.
it works, and hopefully it's good. It's still positive project for the community at large and for future generations.
It is definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that shows such a lot of resilience. And as a tour company, we're absolutely committed to the ethical and sustainable ethos of the Conservancy model. And of course, bringing people to Mattikoko to see how the Maasai Mara wildlife tourism really should be done. We think everything about Mattikoko is a shining example of that. So thank you, Moses. Thank you for having such a fantastic camp. Thank you for having the courage to stand by your convictions in terms of ethics, sustainability and conservation. And the staff are fantastic here. The food's great. Everything about the camp is just absolutely wonderful.
Karibu-san.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast too. World first.
Thank you.
Karibu-san.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, that concludes part 1 of our Safari special. Tune in.
Safari special. Yeah, I mean, if you'd like to come to Mattikoko and the beautiful Maasai Mara in Kenya with us in 2025 to stay here at this wonderful camp and see the incredible wildlife, we're taking bookings now for 2025. The website is africanphotographysafaris.com, or you can message us on the socials or email us at info@africanphotographysafaris.com.
So until part 2, which will be along very, very soon, that's it. Goodbye.
Yep. Ta-da.